waste. This is part of a wider effort to formalize labor, strengthen social protection, and uphold decent work principles even during an emergency. The National Solid Waste Management Authority will coordinate operational planning and work schedules. They will be supported by the Jamaica Defence Force, the National Spatial Data Unit, utilizing GIS mapping to tag and track debris, the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development, and the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. We are identifying additional temporary disposal sites and exploring recycling and the circular economy solutions, which will include using wood chippers to process vegetative waste and mulch, to process vegetative waste for mulch and compost, establishing structured scrap metal recovery, and recovering reusable construction material, and partnering with private firms to pilot community-level material sorting. These measures are essential to build long-term resilience in waste and debris management. We have also begun securing additional trucks, compactors, bulldozers, and heavy equipment, including through pledged international support. Mr. Speaker, countries that have faced large-scale disasters such as Japan after the 2011 earthquake, Indonesia after the 2018 earthquake, and the United States after Hurricane Katrina implemented debris-to-income programs where communities were paid to sort, recycle, dispose, and remove, and to convert debris into usable materials. These programs created temporary jobs, accelerated cleanup, reduced landfill pressure, and strengthened local recycling industries. And Jamaica will follow similar best practices and models, ensuring that our cleanup effort also supports livelihoods and stimulate local enterprise. Mr. Speaker, I should also point out that we are making a special allocation of $150 million. You know what, let me not make that statement though, having said what I just said earlier. No, the Minister of Finance slipped me a note, and I misread the note. In addition to the allocations for MPs, for constituencies, we're also making an allocation of $150,000 per councillor in each constituency. I hope, Mr. Speaker, that Hansa did not record my initial statement. I'll do that later. I can't go back. Mr. Speaker, while the government is providing resources, equipment, and coordination, the national cleanup effort cannot succeed without the full participation of our citizens. Every Jamaican, schools, businesses, community groups, church groups, service clubs, and private households must join in this campaign to clean up our space. A cleaner Jamaica is not only aesthetically pleasing, it is safer, healthier, more resilient, and more attractive for investment and tourism. The cleanup we begin today contributes directly to our economic recovery, our public health, and our national pride. Given the scale of the debris, this will take time. Initial operations are projected for 2 to 4 fortnights, after which we will conduct an assessment and expand interventions as required. So technically, we could go under the special national cleanup program for a month to 2 months just to do cleanup. After that, then we will reassess. Members of Parliament and councillors in targeted areas will receive detailed instructions and guidelines. Letters confirming allocations, that is under your normal routine maintenance Christmas program. You will get those letters by Friday. And for the constituencies that are
Mr. Speaker, as the time for speaking has expired, we ask that the time be extended sufficiently to complete the presentation.
Minister, you have the liberty. PM, you have the liberty. Mike, your mic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm finished.
The question is on the floor for the extension of time. Those in favor? Those against? Ayes have it. You may continue, PM.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm actually at the end. So, members of Parliament and councillors in target areas will receive detailed instructions and guidelines. So, letters confirming the allocations will be sent out by the late Friday of this week. Probably get them late tomorrow into early Thursday. And for the constituencies that are specifically targeted, those 16 in addition to areas in other constituencies, you will all get your letters explaining how you will participate in the program, how you will be able to recommend persons to work, the assignment of the SDC officers, all those details that will ensure that you are effective in the mobilization towards our national cleanup. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members, for your attention.
Thank you, Prime Minister. So the normal allocation for road patching that we would normally get, are we to understand that that's not going to be provided this time around, or that you're treating the payments? Yeah, however you feel comfortable. So is it that the payments that we receive for Melissa relief and for the emergency drain cleaning just before, and the housing allocation, is that kind of in lieu of the road patching resources that we would normally expect at this time to fix up roads? Many of us do that in January after the Christmas rush, because it's quite difficult to administer so many programs at the same time in December. But I'm wondering about that because the roads, there's been a lot of rain, so the roads are in need of patching in the constituencies. So what is going to happen there? In terms of the national cleanup program, the role of the MPs will be what exactly in that? Because you've said that you're going to employ 100 to 200 per constituency in the areas where the cleanup is being done, which are the most badly affected areas. And the SDC is going to handle the engagement and training, you said, of those workers. So do the members of Parliament have any role in that at all? And if so, what is that role? Those are my...
Thank you. Let me start with the role of the MPs. I want it to be clearly understood, Mr. Speaker, that the MPs are integral and critical to the relief and recovery process, and there is no attempt in any way to marginalize or to obviate the office of the Member of Parliament. And in every program that we have designed, the office of the Member of Parliament is integrated and connected and contacted. And I want that to be established for the records. We must, however, appreciate, Mr. Speaker, that unwittingly or maybe by design, we are every day changing the role of the Member of Parliament. The Member of Parliament is becoming less of a legislator and more of a standing office for social work, contracting, construction management. Madam Speaker, this collective body has to be very careful as to how it expands its role beyond its constitutional jurisdiction. And I'm always very sensitive to it, in as much as I am a Member of Parliament, and I say to all, especially the new members of Parliament, I do understand how you feel when you get out into the field and your constituents say, I need help. And if you were to say to them that my role is to go to Parliament and talk, or my role is to go to Parliament or write a letter, they're not going to understand that. They're not going to see the value of that. What they want to see is for you to be present with them in the rain, in the storm, as you were when you were seeking their vote. It is the nature of politics. It's not just Jamaica, it's everywhere. But as leaders, we have to be careful how we succumb to certain pressures that change the nature of our government, including how it lessens accountability and transparency. So I'm very sensitive to that. Absolutely. So it's not my intention to use the disaster response to change the nature of the office and function of the Member of Parliament. And I will say this in response, Leader of the Opposition. When we gave, when we made the allocation of $10 million to MPs, there were certain arguments being put. $10 million, this can't do anything. $10 million, and we agree, $10 million is absolutely insignificant to the overall picture. But note what MPs have said. We need more money for transporting the $10 million worth of goods, not to take it out of the $10 million, but we put money on top of that for transportation. Then some members of Parliament have said, we need funds to actually go and inspect the damage so that we can send back the picture. Then some members of Parliament have said, you know, we need staff to manage all of this. In other words, in other words, I appreciate, and I'm not saying that I don't understand the demands. I too am a member of Parliament. But the office was never designed in the first place to do this. And so either we are going to unwittingly allow it to happen, or if it's the collective mind that it be so, then we will have to sit down and properly provision the office of the Member of Parliament to become a department of the government that delivers service in the constituencies. So it is a reality. So I'm not meaning to open this as a debate, but I'm just pointing out. I'm just pointing out that these are things that, as the people who lead the country, we have to sometimes look above what the public is saying and what everybody else is saying and see what our collective action is doing. Are we leading or are we being led? Now, I mean, it is a debate to be had, Peter, of the opposition. It's a debate to be had, but I wouldn't. For this cleanup program, yes, that's what I'm coming to. So in this cleanup program, as in any other, we expect that the Member of Parliament will play a critical role in one, recommending the persons who will be employed. Absolutely important. So you will be working along with your SDC officers. Number two, that you will be playing a role in identifying equipment that can be used in the cleanup. The NSWMA will be the coordinating body for the trucks and the tractors and the excavators and the power saws and all of those things. So the NSWMA may not know all the equipment that exists within your constituency or in your community. So you will coordinate with them. But just to be clear, MPs are not to get involved in any contracting or procurement matters. I think I have to say this and say it publicly and say it repeatedly. It is not your role. MPs can play a pivotal role in mobilizing the community. Now, when any program is announced with resources, as MPs, we know that the first thing that people see or ask is the money and how much you're going to get. But this is a national cleanup program where, though there is a component of pay, there is also a component of service. It is in all our interests to remove the debris from the communities. Let's be clear. There will be persons in communities who are not able themselves to remove the debris. Old persons, infirm persons. And therefore, as you organize the labor force, as members of parliament, you will have great knowledge of your community to where the help will be needed. So you can help to guide how the various work teams are directed, where they should go and how they should be deployed. So the members of parliament have a critical role to play, but I'm going to urge you to stay within the bounds of what you are constitutionally required to do. Now, the other question was the road patching. Mr. Speaker, we will not be able to do the road patching as we have done in the previous mitigation program because of one, the resource constraint, and number two, we would not want the NWA's resources to be tied up in treating with the procurement and contracting in other areas where the need is not as great as the 16 constituencies and some other targeted areas. So we have taken the decision to focus the efforts right now on getting those 16 areas back up and running. It doesn't mean that there will not be an allocation. It just means that you won't have the allocation now while this program is going on. Because the NWA will play a critical role in this national cleanup as well. Because remember now, most of the debris would be along their corridor, the NWA corridors and the parish council corridors. And we will need the NWA to help us with management and supervision of the various work teams and to help us in the reporting of the removal of the debris. Because at some point in time, there will be accountability, there will be monitoring and evaluation. You might hear that, we move 20,000 truckloads of debris. And then, for some reason, you can't account for 4,000 or 5,000. We don't want that. We want to be able to account for everything. So we're going to ask the NWA to help us with just managing how accounting for the removal of the waste, tracking, and helping us to understand in particular areas, for example, there might be light poles, some debris might block gullies, it might block culverts. So we want the NWA to be there to assist the work teams in proper guidance and direction to make sure that everything is done according to what proper civil works codes should be. I believe you had a third question, Leader of the Opposition. That was it? Good.
Member from St. Catherine North Central.
Prime Minister, I am still, over these years, questioning how it is determined that the hilly terrain of North Central St. Catherine and the Central St. Andrew could possibly get the same funding for bushing when this amount by NWA rates and standard would only do about 3 of my main thoroughfares. So I'm not picking on you, but my colleagues as well. Why would I get up in North Central St. Catherine, where the vegetation is so overgrown? I don't know how I could be compared to East Kingston and Port Royal. So I'm not picking on you. Sit down. I am batting for rural constituencies at this time. the bush are closing upon the cars. People have nowhere to walk. Down in St. Andrew, is it northeast where Chuck is? Yes, northeast. I think maybe you would probably beautify the curb wall, yes. But we have bush, the vegetation that cars can't pass without crying up the side of the vehicles and with people not having anywhere to walk. There's no routine maintenance going on. So let's not fool ourselves. The bushing only takes place once per year. And when that happens, it is at a place where it is not manageable. We have to be using equipment to first clear the sides of the road before we can even send men out there to attempt to bush. Prime Minister, I'm appealing to you. Rural constituencies must be treated differently at this time to be able to take care of overgrown vegetation. My second question relates to the movement of funding. I think we have always been able to, based on what our needs are, that we might be able to do some juggling where possible. Please just elaborate.
Prime Minister, just a minute. Yeah, you go ahead now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for those statements and questions. Because we had cut the program to dovetail it into the national cleanup program, we didn't make the usual parametric provisions where you could make certain changes. But as the program is defined now, I will inform my permanent secretary that I have no objections if a member of parliament were to decide to shift from bulky waste into bushing or from bushing into bulky waste. But there can be no compromise on the $2 million for cleaning drains and waterways, because if you note, it is more for vector control. So you can use this for vector control if you would like. But the threat now is mostly for standing water, where you are having rats and other vectors, mosquitoes. So it would not allow you not to use that $2 million for that purpose. But you can move between bushing and bulky waste removal. On the matter of the rural constituency, it is a constant point being made in these debates, and more as it is made, I am inclined to consider it not as an additional allocation, but as we have, for example, which we debated last week or week before, with the bauxite levy fund for constituency development. Constituencies, they get a special allocation from that. So there may be ways to craft programs that are specific to rural constituencies for which you would qualify as one, rather than to make a general allocation.
Member from St. Anne Southeastern, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Prime Minister. Just to echo, Southeast St. Anne is the largest, geographically, the largest constituency in the country. And so the issues related to, man, a true man, you check your thing. The issue of ensuring that we're able to service and deal with the issues with roads, bushing, etc., is critical. And I want to echo what the member said. And thank you for your commitment to considering it. The other consideration which I would like to ask if you would make, Prime Minister, is some flexibility. You said there will be funds coming regarding patching. And so I wonder if you would consider now allowing some of us to be able to access those patching resources earlier than others. And I say this because the roads in my constituency are downright dangerous, and they've been made more so by the hurricane and the waters from the hurricane. But in addition, we have some breakaways, which might be a separate issue, but certainly road-related breakaways from slippages that need urgent attention. So, two parts to the question. The first is flexibility with the patching resources. Those of us who, in consultation with the NWA, can access and use those resources effectively in the short term, if we can have that flexibility. And secondly, the plans for dealing with the breakaways from the hurricane in constituencies like mine.
Member, and thank you again, Mr. Speaker. I see that the road patching and road maintenance are matters of concern, particularly for the MPs that are not within the 16. Let me assure the entire Parliament, the NWA presented to the Cabinet a budget for recovery of roads for $35 billion. We were not able to allocate $35 billion all at once. We settled on an allocation of $5 billion. That's what we could see our way to fiscally. And in that $5 billion would be allocations for patching up roads, minor and major repairs. I'm not sure if we did anything for
Prime Minister, please. It is now 7:20. House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the time being 7:20, I ask that the House be allowed to sit beyond 7:30 to complete the business of the day.
The request is on the floor. Those in favor? Those against? Ayes have it. Prime Minister, you may continue.
we could see our way fiscally, and members, allow me to just engage you for a few minutes. Please bear in mind that revenues have fallen, expenditures by virtue of what we need for relief and recovery. You would have heard the Minister of Energy explain the demands on the government, even things that we did not budget for, we have to now put them in place. So it's a delicate balancing act to ensure that we don't end up in a financial crisis as we are responding. So every demand that is made, we put it through the lens of what is fiscally possible. Now, what is fiscally possible is also determined by how efficiently you spend the resources allocated. We can make allocations that are not efficiently used. To look at what is the spending capacity of the entities that we are giving the resources to. So when it comes to road patching, for example, if we were to say, fix all the roads, say we're going to fix all the roads in all the constituencies, and then in addition to that, spend more resources on the 16, you know what the biggest problem was? The member, my sister from St. Andrews Southwest, who stood up in Parliament last year and complained that you have allocated, what was it, $40 million, but I can't get anything done. Why could you get that $40 billion spent? Because it had to go through procurement and then contracting and all kind of long process, tying up the NWA staff. Note, we haven't made a budget to increase the staff of the NWA. We haven't taken on more people, it's the same staff. So even if we're making allocations, we also have to think about how the allocations are going to be spent. So these are some of the considerations. So what we have done is to look at the entirety of the roads that need to be repaired, give priority to those that are in the worst damaged areas, which I think we all agree that that's the sacrifice we have to make. But at the same time, as soon as we have gotten those roads underway, then we can look at the others. So we're going to treat all the roads in Jamaica under the emergency procurement because they were all affected. But the emphasis, because of the resources that we have, will be on the roads that are in the most affected areas, and then we will come back and deal with the other roads. So we have allocated $1.5 billion for patching. Note that last year, when we were impacted by the heavy rains after Beryl, we allocated $2 billion for patching island-wide. So we have allocated $1.5 billion. Note as well that out of that five, we have already spent, because we have cleared almost all the roads. There are only 15 roads that are still blocked. And of that 15, some are blocked because, as you mentioned, landslides and slippages and waterlogged, which we just wouldn't be able to address those. So we have already spent in clearing that. As I speak today, all the roads you can drive on. There might still be some push on the side of the road, but that's what the National Cleanup Program is designed to do. And that's why we'll work in coordination with the NWA and the JPS and NWC to make sure that we're not interfering with the civil works and the road furniture and the critical works that are along those roads. And that's the coordination of the National Cleanup Program. So I put the MPs at ease. You will have your roads attended to, but a procurement and contracting perspective, we want to get those 16 constituencies off very quickly, and then we'll be able to address the others. So I would say that by late January, early February, we can start to patch, which would ordinarily be about when you would be able to spend that $10 million anyway. Okay. The overall coordination of the National Cleanup Program is the NSWMA. Yeah. Oh, the 10 million, right. So the usual. So the bulky waste is NSWMA. The cleanup and the management of the drain cleaning and so forth, vector control, that's NWA working with your Ministry of Health. So remember now, if you need to do vector control, contact your local Ministry of Health personnel to assist you either with baiting for rats or treating water or any of those activities that you would normally do in terms of ensuring that any standing water is not an environmental threat.
Member from St. Andrews Southwestern.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have three quick questions. The first one is really a very simple one. Prime Minister, you mentioned an allocation to councillors, which seemed a little bit minuscule. I suspect that they will be hearing more about a program for the councillors. That's one. It's three. I don't know if you just want to take the three. Okay. So just to make sure that as a former councillor, I'm not here and not paying attention to that. So that's one. The second one has to be, Prime Minister, you spoke about government having discussions with the SDC and so on, and giving instructions for the inclusion of the members of parliament and their role. My question, Minister, Prime Minister, is whether or not those recommendations are going to be in writing and clear, and whether or not that similar approach cannot be used for the distribution of relief as it relates wider than just this in this post-Melissa recovery and all of what we're doing. Because it isn't happening now. It isn't. That's two. Remember I said three? Right. So no, the third one, I mean, Prime Minister, it's just very simply, I would imagine government has been having discussions with external sources about debris management based on what you have said is volume of debris Melissa has left with us. Are you ready to update us, or are we to expect any more detailed update further on?
As it relates to the allocation for councillors, revenue impact has also negatively affected local government revenues right across the island. What we have done is in consideration of the fallout generally for local government. I'll leave that burden on the Minister of Local Government when he comes to speak to see what other allocation he can make from his already dwindling resources. But if it can be topped up, I'm certain the Minister will do that. As it relates to the instructions, we will make the effort to put them in writing so that the officers are aware that the members of Parliament have been prescribed specific roles in supporting the national cleanup program. And then your third question is about debris management, right? So yes, we are actually in touch with other entities, and you would know that we have brought in. I asked the UN Secretary General for support in the management of disaster, the logistics of management, and he kindly sent a team in addition to sending a Jamaican, you might know him, Ronald Jackson, who is an international expert in this. And so this is part of the conversation going on about how to manage this debris. What we have done here is from our side, meaning from the executive side, is the financial allocation. And how can we multiply the allocation? So meaning that instead of just paying trucks to remove the garbage, how can we get the people who are removing the garbage understanding about debris, introduce recycling and separation and these other things. So whatever expenditure we're doing, yes, it's about relief from having the garbage, but it is also about making the community stronger. That yes, you see this garbage, but plastics can be recycled, metals can be reused, and we want to get that kind of notion into the community. But we also want to take advantage of this period to rebuild community spirit, to get people to come out and clean their own communities. So that's the idea behind the expenditure. So it's not merely an expenditure, it's multiplying the value of what we get from the expenditure.
Member from Portland Eastern.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prime Minister. Prime Minister, I crave your indulgence because I don't want to sound repetitive. I had a conversation with the Minister of Works, if I'm saying that, yes, in terms of preserving roads at this time. So if we don't have exceptions to the rules in everything that you'd outline, we may find ourselves in a situation where we're spending more to preserve roads that we just previously spent a lot of money to repave and construct. For instance, I can think of one road in Bellevue that's in Fellowship, Portland. The top of it was done, millions of dollars spent, and the bottom of it. In the middle of it, there was no works done. So what you have is the road actually deteriorating, the unimproved area going into the area that was improved and between the road and the drain. The conversation I spoke about is the practicality of you'd have to spend money to even dump the spaces so that it doesn't actually disintegrate further and start to destroy the other road, the new road. So my question then is, will there be an exception to the rules where it's identified? Because I know you outline the role of the MP, but if we are on the ground and we're seeing particular things to preserve the status quo while we await the parishes that are affected, we may find ourselves with a higher bill. And so before the next part of it is certainly the parishes that are situated similar to mine that I would have heard my friend speak about. The drain cleaning exercise is also one of road preservation. When the debushing part of it and the drains, gutters that are like drains on those expensive roads, if they are not, if the debushing and the drain cleaning isn't working in tandem, what you're going to have is that the road itself is then destroyed. And so there are situations where, notwithstanding what's happening with NWA, and I heard it's practical, but the preservation is going to be almost as if we're going to find ourselves with a new problem and a more expensive bill. And so there was a complaint because in my constituency, I've had to take the decision to simply get pearl and shingle, that I'm now learning that there's a different quality, and NWA is telling me you need to stop because the quality of the marl is not good. I'm just bringing that out to say that the practical solution, which rightly the minister would have advised me, is to, if you can stop the gap, you're going to have to do that. But how long can I afford to do that in a private capacity while we wait? And so I just needed to consider that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just listening to the Member of Parliament, I can see his passion and the genuine desire of wanting to help. And just reflecting that when I became a Member of Parliament, I may have taken the same posture. But I'm sure that your senior colleagues over there, as I read their faces, would be saying, he will learn. But remember, when we sit here and make the rules, we are not intent on breaking them. But when exceptional circumstances are brought to our attention, we will have to address them. The provisions made to members of Parliament, and let me say this, and I have to be the one to say it because you're going to face your constituents who will tell you, the Prime Minister allocate $5 million to you, to your constituency. Fix all the roads. The funds that are allocated to members of Parliament are not meant to replace the functioning ministries, departments, and agencies who have budgets to actually deliver the service. The allocations that are given to members of Parliament are there for them to be able to respond to urgent, critical welfare and health and other critical social needs and some infrastructure needs. But the Member of Parliament is not the executive director of the NWA or the managing director of the NWA. He's not the supervisor of works. I have to say that and say it clearly. Now, I know some of us want to pretend as if we are, because that is the way you win votes. But it is setting you up because you will not be able to fulfill the demands. I need to just say your protection from East Portland and for all MPs. So if you have said you have brought it to the attention of the minister, I just had a word with the minister. There is a process. These things, if you bring them to the attention of your NWA parish manager, or I suspect that road is a parish council road, that you bring it to the superintendent of works in the parish council. Those matters would then funnel up into the larger budget, and then the decisions are made as to how the larger budget is allocated to what is a priority. All right?
Member from Eastern St. Thomas Eastern.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Prime Minister, I heard you mentioned some special areas outside of the badly affected areas. I want to crave your indulgence this evening. There are two areas in Eastern St. Thomas. Bath, where the river, contrary to what persons are saying, that persons build their houses on the riverbanks. The road is the Copper Lane area where the river undermined the road. And it's in a very, very dangerous way. The last hurricane, the motor vehicles were washed away. Houses have been undermined, and persons are traumatized because they have nowhere to live. They have to be here, there, and everywhere, living with family members. Some of them, the convenience is not proper. So I am asking for special consideration for the Bath Copper Lane area where the river washed away vehicles and undermined the structure. Also, Rowlandsfield, where there is a breakaway in Rowlandsfield, very, very dangerous, Prime Minister. It happened from Beryl, and it has worsened since Hurricane Melissa. So those two areas I'm asking for special considerations.
Mike, Minister, Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm taking that this will be the last question so that we can wrap up. But you mentioned, member, special communities. We're going to be driven by the ADPEM data as to the areas that were affected. I suspect that Bath and the area that you have mentioned would be considered in the cleanup effort. It seems to me that you're suggesting that it is more than just the cleanup that you need. I take note of that, and I will, through ADPEM and the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, ensure that the proper assessment is done, a report is given, and we see how best we can respond. Questions were raised about breakaways, and I didn't answer them. Now, just to be clear with the breakaways, the NWA is in the process of assessing the breakaways. I have seen that there are members of communities who are saying that they are taking matters into their own hands and trying to create pathways on unstable soil. I can only use this platform to advise members. I am the first one to encourage and support community initiative, but trying to construct pathway on a landslide or a breakaway is very dangerous. The NWA, as I've said, they have done assessments, and there are two issues that we have to consider, which the public should understand. Once there is a breakaway, the alternative is to either bring the road inland, which would mean in some instances, or most instances, going through private property. We would have to acquire that. That takes some time. Or if we decide that it is feasible to restore the breakaway, which is usually a very expensive undertaking for civil engineering. So it is not something that I can tell you that it will be corrected overnight. So if there is obviously no alternatives, alternate route, then we will have to move there very quickly to provide access, right? But if there is an alternative route, or an alternate route rather, I would encourage persons to use the alternate route rather than to risk going through the breakaway or the land slippage.
Member from West Central, St. James.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prime Minister, are you aware that members of Parliament have experienced great difficulty in sourcing equipment in the immediate aftermath of the hurricane and are still experiencing that difficulty, and so it may impact that role of identifying equipment for the cleanup work? Firstly. Secondly, can we get an indication of what equipment has come in through international aid in the disaster response process? And thirdly, whether any mulching machine or other equipment that can assist with the biodegradable vegetation has come in or can be sourced to expedite the cleanup?
So I'm aware of the shortage of equipment. So if there is a general shortage, I'm certain that MPs are going to find it difficult. There is a notion that we have a lot of trucks, and as we pull from the regular trade, it is going to impact construction, agriculture, transportation. So we have to manage that very carefully. What we have done, we have made an allocation of $200 million to acquire equipment locally so far. I don't want to say too much about what we have started to procure, but we have started to look at tipper trucks, which are locally, which we can get out of the local supply here, brand new, and chipping machines, wood chipping machines. And we have started to look for those. There are not many in the local trade because you need the industrial heavy-duty types. We have asked our partners to supply excavators, heavy, what they call it, D9 bulldozers, compactors, water trucks, and we have sourced water trucks here locally as well. So yes, we are trying to source what we can here locally, and we have asked our international partners to also supply. What was the other question? I think that's it.
Mr. Speaker, we have another statement by the Prime Minister.
Prime Minister, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is my honor to report to this honorable House on my recent participation in the G20 summit held in Johannesburg, South Africa, hosted by President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa from the 22nd to the 23rd of November 2025. Over the course of the last few days, I held a series of high-level engagements with international institutions and world leaders with the overarching aim of securing Jamaica's interests in three key areas: advancing the country's recovery and reconstruction agenda following recent disaster events, mobilizing development and climate resilience financing, and reinforcing Jamaica's engagement with global governance institutions and the Global South. In support of this agenda, I met with the Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund and the President of the World Bank, sharing Jamaica's latest damage and loss assessments and presenting the recovery and reconstruction plan to the global finance community. During the Johannesburg meeting, I held productive talks with the following leaders, among others, President Cyril Ramaphosa, the summit host, and he affirmed support for Jamaica through their own disaster fund. I met with President Emmanuel Macron of France, in which we discussed deepening our cooperation and support for Jamaica's financing bid. I met with President Lula da Silva of Brazil, where we discussed possible agricultural support and support for Jamaica's relief and recovery initiatives. I met with Prime Minister Mark Carney of Canada, and I want to say here that Canada, through Prime Minister Carney, has taken a special interest in the financing of the reconstruction. It is a very technical area and an area in which we will require the support of many leaders who sit on the boards of the various international financial institutions where they have representatives on these boards. So when you present your package, you want to have global support from international leaders so that your request, your package of support can be approved by the boards of these international financial institutions. So that was the general thrust of meeting with the world leaders, to garner support for Jamaica's bid for financing. I met with Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India, noting our cultural and historical ties. And we also discussed support for Jamaica's agricultural sector and fisheries sector. And of course, all of these countries that we have discussed all assisted immediately as the hurricane struck. So we also expressed our thanks and gratitude to them. I met with the Vice President of Nigeria, and Nigeria committed to assist in our relief and recovery effort. And as I said, I met with Ajay Banga, and Ajay Banga is the president of the World Bank, and Kristalina Georgieva of the IMF. Interestingly as well, I had a good meeting with Tedros Ghebreyesus, the Director General of the World Health Organization. We discussed the public health situation in Jamaica as a result of the pandemic, and they have agreed to mobilize emergency resources for Jamaica. I also participated in multilateral sessions of the G20 summit, which was focused on disaster risk financing, climate transition, and debt sustainability, key areas for our CARICOM region. Notably, the summit's declaration emphasized disaster resilience, strengthening the international coordination for response to climate-related and natural disasters. Mr. Speaker, in those arrangements, I reiterated Jamaica's strong position. In those engagements, I reiterated Jamaica's strong position. We have already mobilized approximately US 650 million US dollars, that's about 100 billion Jamaican dollars, for immediate available resources via our pre-planned and pre-arranged disaster risk financing framework. At the same time, we have access to more than US $500 million through the rapid financing facility of the IMF. But I emphasize that our multi-year reconstruction effort will require substantially more support than these amounts alone can deliver. As I said earlier, the loss is estimated at US $8.8 billion. However, a portion of that would be private losses covered by insurance. It is estimated, therefore, that there should still be a gap, that there would still be a gap of approximately 5 billion US dollars, which the government would need to fund. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, additional resources would need to be accessed. So, just to summarize that point for the listening public, the damage assessed is 8.8. Insurance may cover 3.8 thereabouts of it. There is still $5 billion, rounded figures, that would need to be funded. We have approximately 1 billion, thereabout, 1 billion that we can allocate towards the reconstruction. So we still need to find 4 billion. That's the window. And how do you get this? You have to, $4 billion US dollars. You have to get out there in the international community. You have to bring your case to the world leaders. You have to ensure that the international capital markets see that you're not going to only rely on their resources, that you can also have even greater support from the international financial institutions, and that helps to make a stronger case. And that is what we have done. The G20 summit, the G20 summit was a convenient place to meet all the leaders in one event. We therefore formally requested the international community, including the IMF, the World Bank, bilateral development partners, climate finance platforms, and multilateral development banks, to assemble a reconstruction support package that scales with Jamaica's ambitions and needs. This includes concessional loans and grants earmarked for resilient infrastructure, sustainable agriculture, including poultry and dairy, citrus, and hydroponics, and for the automation of our agricultural sector, for debt service relief and restructuring options to protect our fiscal space and sustain growth, and technical assistance through technology transfer for agriculture and other industries that we're seeking to develop, and for the risk insurance and contingency financing instruments linked to climate change and natural disaster, an area which Jamaica is the prime example of how this is done and utilized. This mission underscores several strategic imperatives for Jamaica, and by engaging proactively in the G20 and on the margins with major partner countries and institutions, Jamaica is asserting its voice in global economic governance, especially as a middle-income, small island developing state facing climate risks. Our emphasis on disaster resilience, sustainable agriculture aligns neatly with Jamaica's stated vision of leveraging technology, AI, and automation within our agricultural sector, but not just within agriculture, within logistics, within manufacturing, in everything that we are doing. And so we are, Mr. Speaker, positioning Jamaica as the country that is embracing of technology and making ourselves not just the poster child of fiscal resilience, but the poster child of economic resilience in the face of a disaster. Our bilateral talks with Brazil, India, France, South Africa, and Nigeria signals Jamaica's intent to broaden its external partnership beyond traditional donors. And I want to say here, Mr. Speaker, that South-South cooperation is something that Jamaica is pursuing intentionally. I've had discussions with my brother and friend from Rwanda, President Kagame, and he will be sending an advanced team to come and see how they can assist. I suspect that the result of that will be a corps of engineers that will come from Rwanda to assist with our reconstruction. The same thing will happen with Ghana. I had a very good talk with the president of Ethiopia. As I mentioned, the vice president of Nigeria. We are, Mr. Speaker, building close relations with Africa. Because that the G20 was held in Africa is significant, very significant. It shows Africa emerging and Africa being very important to the future of the global economy. But, Madam Speaker, we should note that from a foreign policy point of view, we have always maintained that it is best for Jamaica to always be at the table, to always have a voice. And just to be clear, Madam Speaker, not to be at some table or at a subset. We want to be at the main table where the global decisions are made. And Madam Speaker, it should be noted, it is sometimes, Mr. Speaker, it should be noted, it is sometimes underlooked and undervalued that this is the second time that Jamaica has been invited to the G20. Jamaica has been
Mr. Speaker, the member's time for speaking has expired. We ask that it be extended for 10 minutes to complete the presentation.
The request is on the floor. Those in favor? Those against, ayes have it. You may continue, Prime Minister. Mike, please.
Mr. Speaker, you know, it is oftentimes not looked upon as being of any great import. You know, one member I overheard saying, when God South Africa, he should be here marshalling the recovery. And I shake my head. And the reason why is that I understand how our electorate and how even some of our intellectuals will think about it. And we didn't take the decision of going lightly. In fact, Mr. Speaker, up until a couple of days before, the decision was that I would not be going. But we discussed it and we debated it, and the offer was even extended for us to attend. And we decided that, given that that was the case, we attended. But I want to say this, Mr. Speaker, and it's very important to say. The measure of the recovery is not going to be in how fast you deliver the package of food. The measure of the recovery is going to be how fast you return electricity and water. How you kept the population safe from diseases and health risks and mentally positive in outlook. But the ultimate measure is going to be how you rebuild forward better. Not that you take up a shack that was destroyed in the hurricane and build back another shack. That is not what is going to be measured as success. And to do that, the time of the Prime Minister is not best used handing out a bag of this and a bag of that. The time of the Prime Minister is best used mobilizing the international community to deliver the billions of dollars that is going to be necessary to rebuild the country. So for those people who want to create mischief and mislead people, I leave my judgment to the reconstruction. So this week, there you go. So in the weeks ahead, the government will prepare and circulate to all partners the detailed Jamaica Reconstruction and Resilience Program, document in costing, phasing, governance structures, environmental and social safeguards, and expected impact, that is in terms of job productivity, technology adoption. We'll convene a partner donor roundtable virtually and then in person to formalize the international support package with a view to securing commitments by the end of the first quarter of 2026. And then we will commence with the first initial tranche of early action projects under our framework to demonstrate momentum, accountability, and value for money to our partners, as well as to the Jamaican people, and to ensure that Jamaica's disaster risk financing architecture is fully leveraged and our fiscal framework remains prudent, and that all assistance aligned with our national development priorities and climate resilience goals. Mr. Speaker, I wish to express gratitude to all the Jamaican delegation members and government officials who supported the work in South Africa. I also wish to thank the members of the diaspora who I got the opportunity to meet in South Africa. And let me also extend gratitude to all of our development partners and international institutions for their engagement. Most importantly, I wish to assure the House and the Jamaican people that this mission generated significant dividends, commitments, committed attention to the highest level of global governance to Jamaica's needs, specific bilateral affirmations of partnership, and tangible forward momentum on Jamaica's key strategic priorities. I now commend this statement to the House and look forward to a collective move forward to resilience, prosperity, and inclusive Jamaica.
Prime Minister, thank you for the statement. I have a couple of. In relation to the 650 million that has already been mobilized from the insurances and other sources, could you give me a breakdown of that 650 million? I know Cliff is about 90, the cat bond about 150. What I'd like to know whether the balance of that money reflects insurances or whether those reflect any loans we have taken from any other multilateral partners. I know the 500 million you refer to is an IMF drawdown, which comes from the Rapid Financing Facility. With the 1.15 that we have in hand, could you indicate how much of that we have spent in the recovery so far, and what are some of the immediate priorities? For example, we know many people have lost livelihoods in the tourism industry. We know SMEs have been decimated. What is the plan to provide immediate relief to those particular stakeholders where if you don't provide the relief now, the problem is going to be a bigger problem 6 months, 9 months, 12 months down the road? Secondly, and your colleague may be able to answer this better, are we receiving the full 150 million from the cat bond, or are there any fees or charges related to it, which would maybe 10%? I don't know what the figure is, but are there monies deducted from that to give a net value to the Jamaican people? And then I take note of the plan, and I don't think anybody on this side would have any criticism of your trip to South Africa to lobby for funding. And I don't think anybody said that. But from the preliminary discussions that you would have had with your multilateral partners, have you any indication at this stage, accepting that you wouldn't have something firm, of commitments that would help to close that gap of approximately $4 billion? And then for the Minister of Finance, what would be your projection? You're not the minister, but we haven't gotten a statement from her. We know we're at about 62% GDP. We had expect to get down to 60 before the end of the fiscal year. You're obviously going to have to borrow. What is your projection in the short term in terms of what you anticipate our debt to GDP will rise to in the short term, and then over time, what you think, what level we would be at? And finally, you had indicated a couple of weeks ago, we're going to relax the fiscal rules, which nobody would have an argument with. Have we begun or started that process, formally submitting the report to the Independent Fiscal Commission, etc., so that process is underway, and we have formally made the overtures to the respective multilateral agencies in relation to seeking funding?
Member from St. Andrews Southeast, you mentioned in your presentation a new creature in our our fiscal landscape called the Fiscal Commission. And the Fiscal Commissioner examines all our statements and everything that the government puts forward for its credibility and whether or not it is sound. And they will make pronouncements. So we on this side have enforced a particular discipline. And that is when it comes to speaking on some of these fiscal issues, we allow the Minister of Finance to speak first. The Minister of Finance will come to Parliament Tuesday next week with some of the things that you have just asked. For example, you have asked about whether or not we have started the process to change the fiscal rules. Yes, it has begun, and the Minister will come with the necessary legislative changes that are necessary. And that process of bringing our supplementary and having it reviewed by the Fiscal Commissioner, that is underway. So a supplementary will come next week. So I don't want to answer questions that ought rightfully to be presented by the Minister of Finance at that time. I would say to you, though, that you have asked questions regarding, you've asked a question regarding what we have gotten in terms of the catastrophe bond and these things. The catastrophe bond, I understand that it's a full payment, but there are usually some small fees and so attached. What that is, I couldn't say, I don't know now, but the Minister of Finance, I will have her undertake to present that when she presents next week. Our fiscal resilience plan starts with savings, which we put into our National Disaster Risk Fund, then contingencies, which we set aside from each budget, then insurance, for example, the CRIF, then our catastrophe bond, which we have gotten a payout from, and the CRIF, you remind me what we got from the CRIF? About 91 billion. And then we have access to prearranged financing, essentially prearranged debt that we can get at concessionary rates. And that would come from our partners, the IMF, the World Bank, and the IDB. From the IDB, there are some prearranged funds that can go up to as much as about 400 million, thereabout. We will not be able to get all of it because some of it is reliant on some triggers being met. Those triggers have not been met in this disaster. The CAF, which is the Central American Development Bank, they have given us a grant, but they have said that they would be prepared to give us financing as well. So my visit to the G20 to meet with all of these leaders all in one place was to secure funding over and above what we have already secured through the various systems that I have mentioned, from savings to prearranged debt, because the extent of the damage surpasses what we had prearranged and what we have set aside in savings and contingencies and insurance. So we need to go to the international community, make our case, garner friends, get influence in these international financial entities to look at Jamaica's case specially or give special consideration so that we can get access to more financing. That's the essence of it.
Just a follow-up. Could you indicate how much we have raised from the, I think it's Support Jamaica website, in terms of funding, and whether we have been using those funds to deal with the ongoing responding to the emergencies, etc., and whether those funds are managed through the Ministry of Finance or an appropriate government agency, and whether the same rules that apply in terms of procurement, etc., for normal government-related funds apply to those that would be raised through the Support Jamaica website.
Technically, all the funds raised should go into our National Disaster Risk Fund. Some of them go to ADPEM, go to the account, to the ADPEM account. But all the funds are under the management and supervision of the regular fiscal and financial rules that pertain to any fund that the government of Jamaica has. The question is whether or not, so your question is, did they go into the central consolidated fund or did they go into a special fund? If they went into the consolidated fund, then they are at the disposal of the government. If they go into the disaster risk fund, then they can only be spent under certain conditions and for certain purposes. And so any fund that is related to disasters goes into the disaster risk fund, unless either the donor or the person lending specifies that it can be for budgetary support, which I haven't seen much of that recently. Now, the question that you're asking is, have we spent any of those funds on the relief effort? My understanding is that we have first utilized what we have in the contingency, meaning what we have set aside in the budget, and then what we have in the fund itself. So in other words, we are only spending so far Jamaica's money, because that's immediate, and you know what it is. The others keep, it keeps coming. One day you hear it's X amount, then by tomorrow more comes in. So we'll soon know what the full picture is. I believe the ADPEM director at some point would have given some updates. I don't have those figures with me. Yeah, but I will undertake, member, that at the next time that I speak publicly, I will have the figures available as to exactly what has been raised from all the efforts. A global figure, I'll make those available. And just to be clear, Mr. Speaker, I know there's a lot of talk about government getting money and not using it, and we have to be so careful that these kinds of careless talk. Now, for the people, Mr. Speaker, I'm about to say something, and I just want to be clear. The people who are saying it, and gaining influence on persons who don't understand, it is dangerous. Because, there is a public that believes that somehow we sit here and we are trying to somehow take away money that has come for the relief of the people. Let me say this clearly, Mr. Speaker. It would be morally reprehensible for anyone to be using any government resources in any way that has been given or borrowed for relief or any other action to mitigate the damage of this hurricane for any personal or private gain. And if there is any such thing happening, I don't have to wait for any other entity to ferret it out or find it. I will find it myself. Let it be on the record, Mr. Speaker, that this is not the first disaster that this government has had to address. There was never a question about the administration of resources for Hurricane Beryl. No donor said what I gave, I don't know how it was accounted for. Let it be clear that for the entire administration of the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, where the government of Jamaica executed the largest social protection program in the history of Jamaica. There wasn't even one question of misappropriation of funds. So I want to be clear, Mr. Speaker, that those persons who wish to tarnish myself, tarnish the government, you're tarnishing Jamaica with a lie. I am not worried so much, Mr. Speaker, because wherever I travel and I meet with the international community, you know what they say? They say, you have done an amazing job. And I'm not joking, Mr. Speaker. I don't have to say it about myself. The international officers who come here representing the international agencies, they go, and I don't ask them to, they go and say, direct contradiction of the nonsense some people are saying. So I know that it hasn't done any damage at that level. Because they know, they see, they understand, they know the systems in place, and they know what would have happened in other countries. And they have confidence in the government. But some of them who are saying these things are people who know better, and they mislead. They mislead the people. So let me be clear in this parliament that this government will manage this disaster without any form of corruption, misdirection, maladministration, malfeasance, misfeasance. We are going to manage this disaster with the highest level of probity and integrity. and accountability. And it is necessary to do this, Mr. Speaker, because the scale of what we need in support from the international community can only be gotten if the international community feels that we have the institutional framework to ensure that whatever resources are made available are properly used. So one can only say that those people who are spreading those rumors are determined to bring down Jamaica. They do not support Jamaica. So as I stand here, Mr. Speaker, my statement is also a warning to us. Let's be clear. It is a warning to the government. But it is my duty also to dismiss and dispel falsehood.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have really just one question for the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, are you aware that your statement that the government will prepare and circulate to all partners the detailed Jamaica Reconstruction and Resilience Program document, including costings, phasing, governance structure, environmental and social safeguards, and all of that detail, will ring hollow if you do not ensure that there is indeed a coordinated and joined up approach to what it's doing? Or persons will begin to ask, as they have started asking, why is it this early relief program has been so chaotic, disjointed, and partisan in how it has been carried out?
Mr. Speaker, what we have seen here and the question asked is a classic case of bringing the false notion onto a public platform. I can say here, Mr. Speaker, I can say here, and the member from Southwest, I call her my neighbor and my sister. And I try not to be harsh. I try not to be harsh. But she's saying that she can manage. Mr. Speaker, the member from St. Andrew Southwest is not an expert in disaster recovery. The experts in disaster recovery have spoken, and they have spoken publicly on Jamaican media, on Jamaican radio. They have written documents, and they have said why they have, in fact, they have commended Jamaica as a small island developing state for its response. The persons who peddle this falsehood, Mr. Speaker, seem to conveniently ignore that Hurricane Melissa was one of the strongest hurricanes to have hit Jamaica, not just in the Atlantic, but globally. It is in the top 3 strongest hurricanes. No other hurricane has done the level of damage to Jamaica in its recorded history than this one. None. Within hours after Hurricane Melissa, I picked up the phone and I called the chief, the acting chief of the Fed staff, the head of the NWA, the minister responsible for works, and I said to them, get the airport open. They were out there in the night checking the road to make sure, checking with the necessary authorities to make sure that planes could land. The following day, we were able to open the airport. Mr. Speaker, in a few days, in a few days, we were able to open the Sangster International Airport. In 72 hours. Precisely. Now, let me be clear on this, Mr. Speaker. Let me be clear. Roads were blocked. Communities cut off. I don't like to talk about what the equipment capability of the JDF is. Well, we don't have enough helicopters. We just don't. It took 3 days for us to get additional airlift from our American friends, and I want to thank them for making the air available. When I landed in Black River the day after, I sent a team by ground. That team could not pass through Holland Bamboo to get to me. When I called to say where they were still with machetes trying to cut their way through. JDF was there with them trying to cut their way through. Never forget it, a lady said she walked 20 miles. I saw her coming in to Black River, and she said a neighbor of hers was out in the storm and a wall fell on him and he died. And we asked JDF, as soon as you're able to mobilize, go and find this body. I mean, I would say we had about 5 operational helicopters. Now, you think about having just 5 helicopters 3 days after. How are you going to distribute that to deal with all the problems? Yes. The people who do that are unreasonable, and they are lying. And they don't need Jamaica anymore. Now, Mr. Speaker, I am the first one to say that in the immediate response, there was a scramble. We don't deny that because we have never had this before. Institutions, you know, funny enough, Mr. Speaker, the members from Westmoreland made a very strong case that the disaster response was slow and ineffective. And you know, I reflected on it. I did, because every criticism, I take it and I look at it, because if I am wrong, I'm the first to admit. In the same way that when I looked at the response, I said in the first 3 days, we were all just trying to run around and trying to get things done. And you know what, Speaker? Because the member will tell you that the disaster manager for the parish fell ill, had a stroke, and that key person in the coordination of the response was not available. But I wouldn't only use that as a response, as a excuse. There were persons who lost their roofs, who were cut off, had no telecommunication, we couldn't find them. So to say that our response was slow, it's not just a lie, it's unfair. Let's make another point, Mr. Speaker. The Jamaica Defense Force stood up an operation, and we had to make strategic decisions about how we're going to use our resources. Strategic decision number 1. If there are people who want to come to Jamaica, who have the experience, who have the equipment, and who have the know-how to do this thing, let them go quickly. So I see people saying, I don't see nobody from the government. The only person I see is from the Lacovia police station. How you think the aid got there? You think they just swam into Jamaica? The government opened the airport. The government cleaned the road. The government escorted them. Don't talk nonsense. To ensure that all the people who you see out there who want to give aid to Jamaica, that they are able to do it. You think they come here without ensuring that there are security guarantees? Who you think gives them the security guarantees? You think that they have just automatically just materialized where they are? How many convoys you see moving with the security forces carrying them through? Don't talk nonsense about there was no government presence. I want to give commendation to the police. The JCF needs special recognition in this disaster. because with roofs blown off, no electricity, they stood up. When I went to Black River, the police station was destroyed, nothing. They didn't have any electricity. One of my first order of business was to secure generators. I gave 4 generators to police stations. I don't go out and make this public because that's not my role or my job, but I did it just to make sure that there was a center of response. When we went into communities, we realized that all businesses were destroyed. And right now, we have stood up a program where we are supporting businesses re-emerging. The member from Eastern Westmoreland would know that we're going to help White House, that we have in White House both the Ministry of Investment and Commerce and the Factories Corporation. Their target, their response is to stand up businesses in those communities. No, man, they talk to you. Factories told me to talk to you. Factories told me to talk to you. Yes. I'm sure he will speak to you later. But I just want to point out that Black River, I tasked UDC to help to clean up Black River, and there's a plan to clean up Black River. UDC will do it. And all of this is within effectively days. Now, bear in mind, Mr. Speaker, we're doing relief because what people see as managing the hurricane is carrying a bag of food from point A to point B. And everybody's out there giving out food and taking pictures, and that's fine, that's great. We thank you, we want you to continue to do that. What that does is to relieve the government of that task. But even so, the JDF, Mr. Speaker, is still packaging, has the capability to package 10,000 packages and send them out. And that's what they do constantly. They have a list of communities, along with the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, where every day they are out there giving. Nobody's out there taking pictures with them and saying how great they are doing. But let's think about it. 900,000 people affected. About 40,000 houses flattened. Just multiply that by 3. Let's say 150,000 persons have been impacted. You believe that, one organization here delivering package and one day it's going to solve that problem? How long they're going to do it for? What will have to be stood up to be able to carry this through for months? So we have to be strategic. Build out the hubs, which we have done. Then we build out substations, which we have done. And that logistics hub, which move food through to stations and then to substations, that same logistics hub is going to move building materials to hubs and then into people. In the weeks to come, you're going to see the JDF transition from delivering packages. They will still have a presence, but they're going to transition now to help in the rebuilding of the houses for those people who are most in need. When this is studied, as it will be studied, when the history book is written, our response compared to others, and you can say compared to Katrina, compared to Irma, compared to others, Jamaica has done better than most. And I think it is unfair and unfortunate that there are those who will try to tear down Jamaica. When the history is written, we will know who are the ones who tore down Jamaica and who are the ones who are reconstructing Jamaica. Finally, Mr. Speaker, we have a very clear strategy to manage the disaster. Minimize human suffering. There's a lot of human suffering going on. I witnessed it personally, and you were on the front lines, and you saw it. I saw the impact it had on you. And we cannot deny that there are people who are suffering, who are exposed to the elements, wind and rain. That is the case. And we are working as best as possible to do it. You have to think, are you going to do a general strategy that moves everyone, or are you going to be responding to everyone that is crying out, and you look like you're disorganized? We build a strategy. And that strategy is working, which is to have the JDF marshal the humanitarian response in support and in parallel with our entertainers, our churches, and the general citizens who want to help. That's a very important part of managing the humanitarian issues. While that is going on, let us manage recovery. Now, recovery is let us get our electricity back up, let us get our water back up, let us get our telecommunications back up, let us open up our roads, and let us get our businesses back up. Let's focus on those 5 things. At 74% return of electricity island-wide, let's look at St. James, major corridor, Montego Bay, electricity has started to return. In Hanover, in West Fulham parts, electricity starting to return, and the focus is on getting back the electricity as quickly as possible. Recovery. Get water back, so as electricity comes back, water comes back, but even before that, we are putting in the generators, which builds the resilience. Let's get that up. Get the businesses back up. Recovery. The idea is that during Christmas and that period, we want to accelerate the recovery. And then we enter reconstruction. And reconstruction is not just building back what was there, it's building it forward. Let's use the disaster as a means to induce growth in the economy. So let's do things that are going to create growth opportunities. Yes. And what I did today, in my presentation today, which is a report on what we did in the G20, is about doing that other part of the response to the disaster, which is the reconstruction. So we announced how we're going to manage a reconstruction with the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority. The next question is, how will it be funded? Well, that's what we have just done. We've just gone to the G20 to strategically try to find the funding so that the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority can work. So your question that you asked, if you don't do, when we said we're going to provide the details of the plan, that's what it is. That's why we have the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority. That is the detail of the plan. And you're not going to get the funding without having the details of the plan. And so that's what we have just said here. The details of the plan so that our stakeholders can say, yes, this makes sense. Yes, this looks like something we can fund. Yes, there is the management, there is the structure, there is the oversight, there is the accountability. Let's fund it. And that is where we are. So thank you, member, for opening the door to answer your questions.
Member from, you're yielding to the Westmoreland? Portland, are you yielding to Westmoreland?
I just have one question, if you're permit.
He will be slow. This was one question. Eastern Portland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Prime Minister, you made the phrase "build forward better." Now, in that context of reconstruction, the idea of container homes as a temporary solution is raised. It's floating around. Is there a timeline for the use of the container homes? And in terms of the build forward better, is there a mechanism to which the government will be assisting those who probably don't have the funds to build the type of structure that you envision?
Concisely as I can. Because the question that you have asked requires an entire presentation, which we intend to come to Parliament with on housing. But you say container housing, I prefer to use the term modular housing. And you say temporary housing, some modular solutions are temporary, based upon how they are built. They may last a year or two, if so long. But other modular solutions can last up to 10, 15 years. And we consider those semi-permanent. So it really depends on the type and grading of housing that we bring in. There will be some temporary housing solutions which we intend to deploy to support those persons who have no housing who are vulnerable, elderly, young mothers with family. And we will try to deploy those as quickly as possible. We do not have enough either temporary modular or semi-permanent modular housing on the island. So we have, between the NHD and the Ministry of Housing, we are developing the specs for the housing that we want, which we have done, and we are about to place orders to bring in houses. I announced that last week. It will take anywhere from 60 to 90 days. You know, I've heard estimates of you could get them here in 30 days, depending on where they are and prepositioning of stuff. But it's going to take some time. So you're not likely to see any either semi-permanent or temporary of the modular solutions for Christmas. So you're looking more mid to end of January. Right? That's where those are. So the temporary solutions, which we are now using, we're going to be now using the JDF supply line to deal with, would be tents, heavy-duty tarps, and shrink wrap for roofing. There's a solution of a thick plastic that is shrink wrapped on a housing solution that will provide temporary shelter. So that's what we're doing. In addition to, the member from Eastern Westmoreland would know that we have commitments from our partners to come in and assist. I don't know if the Guyanese are here as yet. So we have Guyana, we have Ethiopia, we have Ghana, and we will have Rwanda, and we will have others from the Caribbean. And I'm working on others as we speak. So you'll start to see teams that will be taking on communities. 250 in the first instance from Guyana. I've said those will go to Eastern Westmoreland, and when the others come, we will assign them to constituencies. The members of parliament will be able to recommend the houses, but we'll give some quota of recommendation to councillors, some quota of recommendation to churches, and then there will be a reserve for, which comes in from the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, what their assessments have said. And I believe in that way, we would have covered all critical stakeholders who could have an input into who the beneficiaries are for those roof replacements. Right. So it would be just looking at the houses to say, yes, this house just needs to repair the roofing for 2 or 3 bedrooms or so. Let's get cracking on that. But it would not be for rebuilding a house that is gone. All right.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hear somebody say, oh Lord, don't worry. Prime Minister, regardless of how we've campaigned against you in the past, I wish you success in this matter, please. I wish you success in this matter, because your success is important to me and the people of Jamaica. Yes? I don't start from trying to do anything that will adversely affect the people of Jamaica. As a matter of fact, my concerns are indeed about the people of Jamaica that I have the privilege of representing. Now, I think there may be a little disconnect that is causing some of the issues. Because persons have made some accusations that I have defended you. You may be surprised to know, but I have defended you in saying that could not be so, right? Because in the middle of a disaster, I don't think it could be that way, right? When the ministers or the ministers of state goes out into a constituency and they don't inform or involve the elected official, that to me sows the seed of discord and causes that level of skepticism to arise. And so it may be your good office that you would need to use, sir, to say to them that when they are going out, they should ensure that they contact the persons that are duly elected and involve them in the process. So we don't find the need to suggest that the office is being circumvented or bypassing the process. That's one. 2, in terms of the distribution, I am grateful for every single thing that comes into the constituency because there is this great need for it. But what gives that perception, I think, that the member from Southwest was alluding to, is that you have people who are being benevolent. Their intentions are good, and they're coming into this space. But there isn't a location. Say you're coming into White House. There isn't a team, say, at White House Community Center that logs what is coming in to say, all right, even though I am from Beeston Spring and I want to go to my community, my family and friends, we are not trying to commandeer it. The government or myself as the MP, not saying to persons you can't go to your family and you can't assist them. What we're simply saying is that if there was a system that would log it to say 500 packages went there, then we would know that we don't need to duplicate that effort and that we need a 4-day window before we go to that community again. So I think it is some of that coordination that is needed because in the PAAC meeting, Major Gale, I think it was, that said it's 116,000 packages that have been distributed. And that would have been for a 4-day period for the 120,000 families that you just mentioned. However, we've gone 20 a day, so you would have needed 5 cycles of it. So clearly other persons would have, what other persons are doing is certainly assisting. But it is the management of that process to streamline how those resources are coming in. Because what is happening, Prime Minister, is that if you live along those corridors that people come often, then you would have benefited repeatedly. But those that are shut in, elderly, infirm, disabled, in more remote locations, you need to have that structure in place so that when things come, we can say, all right, this needs to go up into Lefwall, or this needs to go up into Kilmarnock, or New Works, or wherever it is in the inner land, so that those people can get that benefit every 4 or 5 days. So that's a simple system that I'll be asking for. But I just want to be on record as saying that this has to be all hands on deck. This has to be a response that takes the input from not just us as politicians, but it has to take the input of, as you said not long ago, of other stakeholders, church, community groups, and other persons who have the interests of Jamaica at heart as to how we get aid to those persons that are in need. I too am not a specialist in disaster, but I've had to be learning. And I've just said food, water, shelter, medical care, and then we try to get back some persons to their livelihood. And, just trying to work through that process to ensure that we can assist some persons. PM, there are still persons in my own constituency that are without tarpaulins. And so if I come out and I make a comment, it is not intended. Certainly, I'm not stupid. I'm not saying something that is going to affect more relief coming to the people, whether from locally or internationally. I'm not doing anything to it. It is simply trying to outline what is going on and saying that there are persons here that are living in a certain condition and we need a little bit more assistance for them.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to welcome the comments of the member from Westmoreland Eastern. I think I would describe it as a watershed moment in the debate on disaster response. And I welcome your comments. Now, just to say, member, that the complaints you have had regarding coordination are complaints on this side as well. My MPs quarrel with me vociferously about people just turning up, even government entities just turning up and they are unaware. Even ministers turning up and they are unaware. Same complaints. So I would never tell you that we have a perfect coordination. Now, ODPEM is to be the entity that coordinates the disaster. That's what it is. So it was formerly ODP, Office of Disaster Preparedness, which is to just get ready for the disaster. But then I believe it would have been after Hurricane Gilbert, it became the Office of Emergency Management as well, managing after the disaster. Now, at the level of NGOs, there is some coordination that goes on in the sense that, okay, you're assigned here, you're assigned to Black River, you can go here, we will give you warehousing space here, and you operate. So, but at the level of someone just coming into the space and saying, hey, I want to contribute, the only kind of organization and the only way to capture that we have is to say, if stuff is coming in and you say you're bringing it through ODPEM, then there is a process to clear it and you can get certain benefits. Now, from that point, there should be built on more management where we require people to register and let us know where they're going. The problem with that is that the well has been so poisoned that people believe that the government is coming to steal your stuff or to take away. And you find that there is genuine resistance to giving the government or giving information, including collecting information about who received packages. So we have taken a decision that we are not collecting any information from persons who have received packages. However, that cannot continue forever. I'm sure when the PAAC meets, the question is going to be asked of the permanent secretary and the other officers who received the 116,000 packages. We won't be able to answer it because the very people who said, you know, you're asking us for IDs and we're suffering. Can't continue with it like this. So at some point, a system will have to be put in place. And we can't keep packaging stuff and moving it. We really need to move that back to the private sector, where it has been done for decades, for hundreds of years. Wholesalers, retailers, corner shops, they package stuff and sell it. What the government should be doing is giving you a coupon or a debit card with cash on it, as it's done all over the world, and you go to the shop and you buy your stuff. But to do that, we need to stand up back the shops, and that's what we're doing. So this thing that is going on now, of everybody going into communities and throwing out bags and people getting, which does compromise the dignity of communities and the dignity of people in need, we need to end that very quickly. And that's what we're trying to do. So the JDF is going to transition its distribution network from food to materials to support the teams that are coming in to build. Because, you know, if you have 100,000 sheets of ply, you have to secure them. You need to have trucks to move them, or zinc, or whatever it is. So you see that why that supply chain and that storage is necessary. And that's why the JDF is in charge of that, to manage, because it is going to come in, and we are going to need to manage it. And so, you know, we don't want to have to be competing with food or, you know, having zinc. So what we want to do is to move the food and stuff back to where it was normally distributed through the normal shops and so forth, and have the JDF now start to do some of the rebuilding. When the MPs, when the ministers are going out, remember, just to be clear, the ministers of state and other ministers and senators and so, they have their official duties. When they're on official duty, it is the protocol, and it is established on my side, and I'm certain on your side, that the official minister, when you're on official duty, you should call. So if you're going to visit a school, if you're going to visit a church or the courthouse or whatever, the member of parliament should be notified. But the MPs have private lives, and they want to do some private things, the ministers, and so sometimes they're out. I've seen the videos where they have introduced themselves as minister so and so. But I'm certain they weren't visiting a school or visiting, you know, a government entity. Right. So if they are out on their private business, that's fine. But if they are out and they are going to a public entity or a government entity, it is the protocol that is well established and must be respected that the MP ought to be notified. Whether it is the opposition MP or the government MP. I don't want anybody coming into my constituency without telling me if they're coming for official business.
Just a matter of housekeeping. I was just reliably informed by the Minister of Gender Affairs that the blue ribbon that is pinned to your jacket, that you should, sorry, purple, have me excuse, that you should wear it for 16 days, and those persons who are not in receipt one, that you can take one from her. So for the next 16 days, you're asked to wear that on your lapel. Member from Centre and Southeastern.
Yeah, but I didn't turn my mic on at 9. Prime Minister, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing us to have this conversation. I'll make it quick, but I'll start with the fact that we've gone through the food phase and we agree that it's not in keeping with the dignity of people in the way that we'd want it. And I have had the experience of working in emergencies. I know the cards work. And so as we move to the next phase, I would suggest that we do not repeat that error. And instead of going to having supplies delivered, why don't we introduce the cards? Why don't we go that way now, allowing people to have a card with a set value which they can use? Yes, so I'm saying, so let's do that instead of, because we're talking about the issues of supplies and the use of the JDF. I am listening. I'm saying let's make that, Mr. Speaker, let's make that the priority now. I know you want to go on, but hear me out. The second thing has to do with, there is obviously a great measure of distrust, for want of a better word. A distrust, I'm not sure where the source is, Prime Minister, but it exists. It exists, and that's what I think you are responding to. And for us to deny that it exists is to continue it. For it to ignore it is to allow it to fester. So my question then is, how is it that we're going to manage? How is it that we're going to reduce that level of distrust? And it's not limited to our people only. It's not restricted only to our people. It is also evident in terms of our ability to bring some of the private players to provide services in the response. So it is there. It is also reflected in where people are putting their resources. That is a sign of distrust. And it has nothing to do with the government of the day. It's a broader issue which we have to deal with. Now, the other thing is that the other thing which we need to focus on, and which you spoke about, is we do need to ensure that we have strong oversight. So don't expect people to trust without actually showing them why they should trust, without bringing them in. And so the question is, what mechanisms of oversight?
Please stop.
What mechanisms of oversight?
The member is rising on a point of order.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to know what is the question the member is putting to the most honorable Prime Minister, because based on the Prime Minister's comments, so far the member has not asked a question as it relates to the Prime Minister's presentation. So I'd like to know, and the member must be aware it's 9 o'clock.
Thanks, member. It is for that reason that I turn your mic off if you notice, because you were going on and I was trying to stop you. You need to get to the question. You're going to ask a question now.
The standards have changed in the last 10 minutes because we've been having a conversation.
Member, you're going to ask a question or not? Please. No, you're not going to say. Turn your mic on and you're going to ask a question directly, or else.
Mr. Speaker, will you protect me from
I'm only going to protect you if you're asking a question.
So here's the question. Here's the question. What mechanisms of oversight are we putting in place? And oversight which includes broad public participation. One. Second, how will the Parliament, including the opposition, as well as members of the public, participate in the Reconstruction and Resilience Program, which the Prime Minister announced? Those are the two additional questions. Thank you, Speaker.
Member from Southeast, Center, for the two questions. So let's look at the one on trust, but it is also tied to the systems of accountability and transparency. Mr. Speaker, I'm a firm believer in the state, and I'm a firm believer in ensuring that the state has powers to be used for the benefit of the people. And the powers of the state must be such that its use can be questioned, that those who have power and authority must report, that there is openness and transparency in government, and that systems are in place to secure those. In our system, Parliament is an oversight body. We tend to want to depreciate the value of parliamentary oversight, primarily because it does have a high political motivation, but that does not remove the obligation or duty of Parliament for oversight. So before I tend to diminish Parliament, the idea is to strengthen Parliament, because Parliament is the people's representative who have been elected to stand here and ask questions, make laws. So we must never feel that we don't have the power of oversight. And so I'm very worried when parliamentarians stand up and say, somebody else must look over us. Then why were you elected, if not to look over the people's business? No, but I'm giving you my answer. So I have never in any way abdicated my duty when I was opposition leader, minister, or prime minister, to act in the best interest and to oversee the public's duty, the public's business. I found that was my duty. So the first line of oversight of the government must be the Parliament. So when this whole matter was brought to us about how are we going to oversee what was happening, I said, well, let's form an oversight committee, a special committee, as we did in COVID. And it worked brilliantly. There was no issue. In COVID, I ended up having to use executive powers, meaning powers that did not have to necessarily go through all the rigors of use of parliamentary oversight. But I still took it here. Yeah. Every measure, when it was announced, we took it here and it was debated and it needed to be changed, we changed. Because I just felt it was important that the use of executive authority still must have the oversight of Parliament. So I'm a firm believer that parliamentary oversight is the first stop in the business of transparency. I was quite disappointed when the opposition said, well, no, they won't participate in that. what they will do is use the PAAC. I said, fine. I've got no problem with that. If you want to use the PAAC, which is to give general oversight to all the operations of government and not give specific oversight to the operations of the... That's how you want to do it. I don't have a problem with that. So let's do it that way. But let there be parliamentary oversight. Now, our democracy has evolved in the 90s to establish something called a social partnership. And the social partnership has been very useful, a very useful mechanism in giving oversight to politically contested, to highly political contested initiatives in the society. The social partnership has been very effective in giving oversight to the economic program of the 2000s, which we all benefit from now in establishing fiscal discipline and fiscal responsibility. EPOC, part of that social partnership. But we have an established social partnership. So as we establish the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority, I intend to use the social partnership to continue to give the kind of oversight. I don't need to go and recreate and reinvent the wheel and go outside of what is the established procedures and systems that have worked. That have worked. But outside of that, we must use technology to give openness, transparency, and access. So we have said to ODPEM, which is the focal point of the relief, which is one of the shortcomings of the institution before. They did not have inventory management system. In short order, they have put one together. It is up and running. We need to go through the testing phase. And I've already said to them that once it is established, it's up and running, and you're sure there's not going to be any errors that will undermine its credibility, then we'll give you a public dashboard. So any member of the public can go on and see what ODPEM has in store, what it has given out, and who has got it. That's a big way. So that everybody who wants to say who is stealing what, and we'll have the data there to show that none of the nonsense that they're talking about is true. We have also said, no, but a large part of the undermining of the trust. You know, I see a member from that side saying, you know, they've gotten so many generators and this and that, and where have they gone? Anyway, the point is, member, that we need to show the public everything that we have gotten and how it has been spent. That's one level of accountability and transparency. But when we talk about accountability, we only talk about accountability in the accounting sense. You got $1 and you spent $1. We now need to talk about accountability in the efficiency or economics. Why did you spend the $1 on this when you could have spent it on something else that would yield greater result? We're not at that stage yet. The public doesn't necessarily look at accountability in that sense. All right? So we also need to give the public confidence that the decisions that we are making, though they may not seem, you know, in the first instance to make sense, but with further review and analysis, you will see that they make even greater sense. Like taking generators and just giving it to people, rather than take the generators and build resilience in our public institutions, which makes greater sense. Or do we take the 600 generators, and how do you give it to the 150,000 people or the 40,000? It don't make sense. Right? What I'm saying is one thing to account for 600 generators. It's a next thing to say, how are you going to use them efficiently? That's another level of accountability. We need to take our people and explain to them, because many of them don't understand it. And we encourage a lot of the foolishness that people are saying. So you talk about trust, member. We have a duty to say to our constituents, look, stop this foolishness. It is undermining the society. We all have a duty. I want to thank members for participating in this debate. I thought that this was probably the best debate we have had in this matter, and I want to thank members for participating.
As it is, member from St. Anne Southeastern, I made mention of the standing orders earlier, and I'm going to read from it again. It has to be done because standing order 43, verse number 4, if a member shows disregard because it was done, and even though we're stopping the member, he went on and on and on. I turned the mic off because I wanted you to stop. All right. Please make yourself affair with the book. Please. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House are the following: the Road Traffic Reduction of License Duty Order 2025 and its resolution under the Road Traffic Act, the annual report of the Anti-Dumping and Subsidies Commission for the financial year 2020-2021,